topic assigned to me is on measuring techniques, which also includes the scaling techniques in research analysis, and the second one is on the sampling techniques. So I hope all of you knew the steps involved in research, starting from identification of the research problem to report writing. Once the topic has been selected for the research work, after identification of that and defined it by reviewing literature and all other sources which are available for identification of the research problem, so then you also, as a researcher or investigator in social sciences, we have to raise some research questions converted into objectives to make our research work more concrete. Hence, we need to formulate hypotheses, and after doing all these things, so then we need to frame our methodology of the research work. So under that methodology of the research work related to the collection of the data, we need to take care several things. Probably one among them, especially in preparation of and framing the questionnaire, is measurement related aspects. Both the measurement and the scaling techniques are the part of that preparation of the survey or the questionnaire. So hence I don't want to get into that all the pre-required steps to this step, that is for preparation of the questionnaire. There we need some measurement aspect, that is the measurement of the constructs or the measurements of the concepts, and also we need to scale that constructs or the concepts. So hence our discussion in the first session is related to how do we need to measure the constructs or the concepts of our research or the information which we wish to collect from the respondents. So we need information, we need data, but before getting to the field, we need to prepare a questionnaire, construct a questionnaire, but in that questionnaire, in constructing the questions of the questionnaire, we need to represent the information, and also we need to measure that information, and to measure that information, there are various techniques developed by researchers, statisticians. So hence, it is related to measurement of the constructs or the measurement of the concepts. So once we have measured it, and we also need to identify some scales for that construct which belong to a particular predefined rule. So we will have a brief discussion on these two concepts. The one is measurement techniques, the other one is scaling techniques. So the measurement is not unknown to us. In every day our life, we make use of this concept of measurement. So we need measurement. So where this measurement is given us some yardstick to determine some construct or a concept. So for example, we need an yardstick to represent weight, temperature, or any other such aspects. So that's why we need some yardstick to our constructs or to our concepts, and based on that measurement, we need to measure the concept which are involved in our research work or come in our questionnaire. And we also measure when we judge how well we like a song or a painting or the personality of our friends and whom we admire or heroes. So, which means there are some constructs, there are some concepts which are included in our research work. So they are measurable in some aspects. Some are not quantitatively measurable, not continuously measurable. So probably we are familiar with that metric yardstick and the non-metric yard. That is the metric measurement and the non-metric measurement. So for example, weight, height, most of the economic variables like income or the price, demand, sales, advertisement, both in case of marketing and also in business aspects. So they are measurable. So there is a standard yardstick to represent these concepts, constructs in numerical form. So that's why there is some predetermined yardstick for these types of concepts. But there are also some constructs or the concepts in our questionnaire, or we need to collect or wish to collect some concepts which cannot be directly measurable in terms of quantitative form or in numerical form. So like just the second point, like a song or a painting or the personalities of the persons. And like that, there are several such aspects, even for example, religion, gender, caste, location. Like that, we are able to identify several such concepts which are needed for our research work. For example, if I take a marketing related example, so for a sales department, so whether a product has to be sold in Mysore or in Bangalore or in Hubli, so then these are the places. So these places cannot be quantifiable, cannot be measurable. So hence we are also have such concepts which are qualitative in nature. So that's why broadly we can classify the information which we will collect or wish to collect during our investigation are broadly classified into metric and non-metric, measurable, non-measurable, quantitative and qualitative. So that's why the constructs are the concepts which are included or which should be included in our questionnaire to get data or information related to that are of these kinds. Some are having some predetermined yardstick, but there are some aspects which are qualitative in nature. So thus measure physical objects as well as abstract concepts. So the physical objects are quantifiable, measurable, but whereas there are some concepts, there are some constructs which are abstract in nature. That means we need not able to represent them in pure numerical form, quantitative form, metric form. So that's why in every research work, so we wish to collect the information related to both the physical concepts as well as the abstract concepts. So those abstract concepts are normally called in research as qualitative related concepts. And the measurement is relatively complex and demanding task, especially so when it concerns qualitative or abstract phenomena. So if the concepts are physical, quantitative, measurable, or if they are continuous in nature according to the mathematical rule, so then there is not much complexity in measuring the concepts. For example, if I take sales, the number of that particular in a particular shop, it might be 10 or 100, 1000. So there is any complexity in representing and measuring that construct or the concept. But if the concepts are abstracts, if the concepts are qualitative in nature, so then the measurement is very complex. And thus by measurement we mean the process of assigning numbers to objects or observations, the measure of levelment being the function of rules under which the numbers are assigned. So that's why we have to measure both quantitative variables, qualitative variables, physical as well as the abstract concepts. So hence we need to assign the numbers for these variables, both physical and abstract related variables. And the level of measurement being a function. That's why we are able to make use a functional form, or this is a process which involves a function assigning numbers which based on some rules. So there are some rules in assigning numbers for the concepts, number for the constructs, number for the information of the respondents which we wish to collect. So hence the measurement is a process of assigning numbers both for a quantitative variable and also for a qualitative variable. We need to assign the numbers for them. And of course, why we need this measurement, why we need assign the numbers for these constructs or the concepts or the information gathered from the observations or the respondents. So we need this because we need to make use the tools for the analysis, or more specifically statistical tools. So to make use statistical tools, we need to assign numbers for the concepts or the constructs. So probably in some the sessions in future course, you will get into that statistical measures and why that statistical measures need your information in numerical form. So hence, to make use the statistical data, statistical tools for the analysis of the data, we need to represent or we need to assign the concepts or the constructs in numerical form. That's why measurement is simply defined as assigning numerical numbers for the concepts or the observations or the information which we will wish to gather from the field. So it is easy to measure in respect of the objects or the concepts that are quantifiable, as just I have told, because the measurement tools are standardized, the measurement obtained is highly accurate. So for a quantitative variable, for a physical variable, so they are quantifiable. So there is no inaccuracy in representing the numbers for those. For example, height, there is no inaccuracy. For temperature or measuring temperature, there is no inaccuracy. Measuring sales, there is no inaccuracy. So measuring expenditure of a household, there is no inaccuracy. So that's why these types of physical concepts are accurate, because there are some standardized procedure to measure these physical concepts or quantitative concepts. However, if the concepts are abstract or if they are qualitative in nature, the measurement becomes quite difficult, because the measurement tools are not standardized and the results are relatively less accurate compared to physical concepts or quantitative concepts. That's why the first point which we need to bear in our mind related to assigning the numbers, which is the measurement of the constructs or the concepts. But though we are able to assign the numbers or measure the qualitative variables, but the number we are assigned to the qualitative variables are not as accurate as the quantitative variables or the physical aspects. So these are the things, again they are continue related to that. Of course, probably many of us having the knowledge of mathematics, because the number system is a part of mathematics, and within mathematics we have a theory called set theory. Within that set theory we have a domain and range. So based on that concept of domain and range, we have to assign the number not only for the quantitative variables and also for the qualitative variables. So for example, if you have collected the information related to the gender, okay, so the gender is a qualitative variable, it is an abstract, okay, so then we can assign the number for this qualitative variable as 0 and 1. For example, 0 indicates male, 1 otherwise, or for female. And also, for example, if you have the other variables like location, urban, rural, religion, which has more than 2 categories, 2 qualities. So for religion, if you have 3 religions, then 1, 2, 3 like this. So this is called as assigning numbers, not measuring the numbers, though generally we call it as measurement, but for here we are assigning the numbers since there is no any predetermined standardized rule. Always 0 should be assigned to male, 1 should be to female. Even you can change it, 1 for male, 0 for female. So that's why the numbers which we assign for the qualitative types of variables or the abstract form kinds of variables are arbitrary in nature. Arbitrary in the sense there is no any rule in assigning the numbers for these types of pure qualitative variables. So because in assigning the numbers or measurement of the constructs or the concepts, so we need to have some knowledge related to a concept called, we will discuss, that is a part of that measurement, that is measurement scale. Measurement scale, all the information which we will collect from the field irrespective of the disciplines can be broadly divided into 4 measurement scales. The one is nominal, the second one is ordinal, the third one is interval, and the fourth one is ratio scale. That means all the information can be classified into these 4 scales. That is called as a primary scale of measurement, which include both quantitative and qualitative variables. So already we have noted that. So hence we need not to get into that. So for example, if you take, if you want to, we measure not the object but some characteristics of this. So that means in case of the abstract kind of variables or qualitative variables, so there we are not measuring the variable. Actually we are measuring the attribute, quality, characteristic of the variable. For example, earlier I have told you that that is the gender. The gender is a qualitative variable. It possesses a quality of gender, sex. So, sex. So if I say that a person is male, so then that male possesses the properties, characteristics or the attributes of that particular aspect, whereas female doesn't have that, and vice versa. So that's why in all these abstract related measurement aspect, it is whether the quality is present or absent, whether that person or the object or the observation possessing that quality or not. So like their perceptions or attitudes or preferences, especially in case of marketing related research towards the brand or the commodity or so on. So that's why another important point which we need to bear in our mind related to the abstract form of measurement, qualitative types of measurement, is we are representing in terms of the number regarding or pertaining to the attributes or the quality, not the direct. For example, in case of sales, it is number of the units visible, number of the units which is visible. But whereas in case of attitudes, whereas in case of that we are measuring the observation, but it is attitude or it is behavior or their preferences, so they are the attributes. That's why in case of that abstract form or the qualitative variables, our focus is on these types of characteristics, whether it is presented or not. So that is related to measurement. Okay? So measurement is a procedure of assigning numbers, and we need to assign numbers for 2 types of constructs or the concepts. The one is physical or quantitative, the other one is qualitative or abstracts. So there are standardized rule for assigning numbers or measurement for physical kind of constructs or concepts, but there is no such standardized form of measurement or yardstick for qualitative or the abstract form of the variables. And the another part of our discussion is related to scaling techniques, the scaling may be considered as extension of measurement. So, it is an extension of measurement which involves creating a continuum upon which measured objects are located. So, that means already we have specified an yardstick to measure that qualitative variable or abstract variable. And after that, we have a continuum, continuous scale, for example. Okay, so that includes some numbers. So, for example, see if I intend to measure the price, it is a single point. Single point in the sense the price is only rupees 100, or it might be 150. But these qualitative variables, in terms of scaling, we have a scale. So, it is a continuum, a continuous in nature. So, the attribute or the preference or the opinion of the respondent related to that abstract might located in different places of that scale, different spaces of that scale. So, for example, like this, if you have a question related to say the preference of the consumer related to a product, okay, whether the consumer is highly satisfied with that or only satisfied, neutral, not satisfied, not highly satisfied. Now you have a scale. So the preference of the consumer might located in any of this, within this scale. So hence it is a continuation of the measurement. Scaling is a continuation of the measurement, and it involves, we have to create a continuum upon which the measured variable or the objects are located. So this is the difference between measurement and scaling. And scaling is the process of placing the respondents, just I have told you, on a continuum with respect to their attitude towards banks. For example, if your preference is related to the banks, so then you should have to locate the opinion of the respondent in a particular place in that scale, predetermined scale. So, for example, scaling is the process by which respondents would be classified having unfavorable, neutral or positive attitude towards that bank, whether the respondent has a positive attitude or unfavorable attitude, or some might not intend to give information to you. So, they are neutral. So you should have to locate, if the opinion is positive, then you have to locate him in this side. If it is unfavorable, then this side. If he or she is not willing to share the information, then he or she is neutral. So that's why the scaling is a continuum where we have to locate the respondents in a specific place within that scaling process. So this is about just defining the concepts of measurement and scaling. So now let us consider the techniques related to measurement. So the primary scales of measurement, there are 4 scales, as already I have told you that. So these are also called as the mathematical measurement of the variables. So they are the observations, or the information, or the data, or the variables in general. So probably you are so familiar with these nominal variables, ordinal variables, interval and ratio scale variables. And again, these 4 scales of the variables, or the measurement scales, okay, are again broadly divided into 2. One is metric, the other one is non-metric. First 2, that is nominal and the ordinal scale of measurements, are non-metric. So non-metric means non-measurable, whereas the last 2, interval and the ratio scale measurements, are come under the metric measurement, or also of course we can call them as quantitative variables and qualitative. So first 2, that is the nominal and ordinal variables, or the scale of measurement, are the qualitative related measurements, whereas the last 2, interval and ratio scale, are quantitative variables or quantitative scale of measurement. So if you have a brief discussion on this, okay, the same. The first two are the non-metric, and the last two interval and the ratio scales are the metric measurements. So if you take the first, the nominal scale, the name itself indicates, the nominal scale itself indicate it is nominal in nature, figurative in labeling the objects or the attribute of the respondents. So why they are nominal? Because they cannot be purely measurable. So we can figure them, or we can identify the quality of that object, quality of the objects. So only we are able to identify and the classify that objects. So like religion. So for example, in this say session itself, or in this class itself, we can classify, okay, this group based on the subjects. So few might be from economics, other might be from sociology. So the third group might be from political science. So now it is the name of the subject. The name of the subject is a qualitative variable. It is a nominal variable. So which cannot be measurable, which cannot be measurable. So hence these nominal variables can be classified, categorized. So we can make groups from that. And by making use of that groups, then we can make some analysis, like out of these 40 participants, so 5 are from economics, 8 are from sociology, or 10 from third subject. So this is called as counting. We are able to only count or frequencies. So that is one of the statistical analysis. So why, of course, we need this knowledge in preparation of our questionnaire itself, and also to get information from the respondents, as earlier I have told you that the statistical tools which have been developed by the statisticians are classified based on these measurement scales. So that means the arithmetic mean, one of the measures of central tendencies or averages, cannot be used for these nominal variables. That's why in selection of the statistical tool, the knowledge of this measurement scale is must. Without having the knowledge of measurement scale, of course, the tool which we will make use for our data analysis might not be appropriate, not suitable. So that's why we need knowledge of this measurement scale, not just for in collection of the data, even for selection of a appropriate or suitable statistical tool. For example, the numbers assigned to the respondents in a study constitute a nominal scale, because you have assigned the number. For example, you have 300 respondents, or you have to collect information from 300 respondents. You have assigned number from 1 to 300. So this is a code, a number you have assigned. So this number is nominal. So that means first person 1, second person 2, third person 3, or respondent 3. Even you might change that number so into first person second, third person 2, the second person 1. There is no difference in that. So that's why here we assign the numbers, but these numbers have no meaning at all. So as earlier I have told you that these numbers are the codes we have assigned for these types of qualitative or just for the purpose of identification. That means identifying the quality of that particular respondent in terms of their gender or the religion or the job, occupation structure, job structure, and so on. So that's why our purpose, the main purpose of these types of variables which are included in our questionnaire is just to identify that, and there is a strict one-to-one correspondence between the numbers and the objects. So that means there is a strict one-to-one correspondence. So means you have assigned 1, means you should have to bear in your mind that the 1 is assigned to that particular aspect only, particular object only. So you should have to make a note related to that. So 1 is assigned for this, and the 2 is assigned for this, and the 3 is assigned for the third object or 1. So the each number is assigned to only one object, and each object has only one assigned to it. So that means you cannot assign two numbers for the same object or like that. So if you get into the examples like this, the number assigned to the runners. So normally we have numbers to the runners in athletics or in other games. So they are arbitrary in nature. So like this, 7, 11, 3. So there is no meaning in assigning that numbers, no matter which one is first or which one is second. So then we can give several such examples. The one more is that, so in case of admission process, we have assigned a number for our students, admission number, So that admission number has no meaning. It is just for our identification. So the number 1 is this student, number 2 is this student, and so on. So like this. So to identify some attribute, to identify some characteristic, so to identify some quality of the object, we have to assign some numbers. So since the number has no meaning at all, no mathematical meaning at all, no quantitative type of meaning at all, hence the number we have assigned is nominal only. So hence all these variables are called as nominal variables. So there are several things related to that, some more examples, hence we need not get into that. So even for example, if in case of experimental analysis, so there are, if we have two groups, one is called as experimental group, the other one is called as non-experimental group. So the experimental group is the group which we are focusing on the group, and the non-experimental group is a control group. Our purpose is to compare all the results we have obtained from the experiment group with the non-experimental groups. So normally again we assign the numbers like 1 for experimental group, 2 for non-experimental group. Again we are assigning this number arbitrarily. So there is no any standardized form for this, or there is no any scientific way of assigning numbers for this experimental group and non-experimental group and so on. Okay, and as earlier I have told you that the statistical tools which are available to analyze the information collected in our research work for these types of nominal variables are limited. That means there are only limited statistical tools are available for the nominal variables. So like counts, frequencies, for hypothesis testing it is chi-square test and like that. And of course in recent years there are some advanced tools, even in case of regression analysis. Probably you might have been heard that, so that is nomial type of regression, that is called as multinomial regression and so on. So they are advanced tools, but the basic tools are only counts, frequencies, or relative frequency, cumulative frequency, or so the mode for this type of one. So like this, these are only limited statistical tools are available to analyze this nominal variable. So this some other examples, marital status or nationality, gender, so telephone number, like this, these are all only a nominal in nature. So I don't, of course, these are again some few more examples for that nominal variables. So as I already told you that. So then the second type of measurement scale is ordinal scale. The ordinal scale is also having or possessing the characteristics of a nominal scale. Okay, that means we have to give a name for a variable. Okay, and all the qualities of the nominal variables are also found in case of ordinal variables, but the difference is we can order them, we can rank them. So there are some nominal variables, like for example, earlier I have told you that the level of satisfaction. So the level of satisfaction is a nominal variable. Means, so the numbers which you have assigned for these kind of variables, like their attitudes, behaviors, or this kind of preferences or level of satisfaction, they also are assigned with the numbers, assigned with the numbers, but the numbers can be ordered, or the abstracts or the constructs or the concepts which we are being used can be ordered. For example, if I take that same level of satisfaction, so the order might be like this. And there is no any hard and fast rule. You can have the two-way orders. So for example, one is highly satisfied, satisfied, neutral, not satisfied, not highly satisfied. And also you can reverse this. You can reverse this. And now you can assign the numbers like highly satisfied 5, satisfied 4, 3 for neutral, 2 for not satisfied, and 1 for not highly satisfied. Okay, so there is a meaning for this order. Earlier, there was no such meaning for the order of the number. That's why male, female, or female, male. Assigning 1 or 2 or 0 and 1, there is no meaning for that. But here, there is a meaning in the order of the abstract or the concept. So, hence, there are some variables, they can be ordered, they can be ranked, hence the name of the variable is ordinal variable. So, even the level of education, for example. So, the level of education can be ordered, illiterate, primary education, so then secondary education, college education, and so on. But you cannot mix this illiterate, college education, so then primary education, so you cannot mix this. So mix like this. Even for example, in case of occupation, in a particular organization like CEO, then that is the managers, so then skilled laborers, unskilled laborers. So there is a meaning in the order, meaning in the order. So likewise, we need information. Based on our research questions, research objectives, or to test our hypothesis, we need these types of variables are also. And if we have the variables like this in our questionnaire, so then they can be ordered like this, and hence they are called as ordinal variables. Though the order is meaningful in this case, or for these types of ordinal variables, but the distance is not meaningful. Okay. So earlier, for nominal variables, only numbers are assigned. There is no meaning for the numbers. Whereas in case of ordinal variables, there is a meaning for the numbers. And also, there is a meaning for the order also. But it is not having a mathematical meaning of the distance. So in case of mathematics, probably we know that the 2 is 2 times of 1. 3 is 2 times of, 3 times of 1 and 1.5 time of 2. And 4 is 2 times of 2. So that means there is a meaning in the distance, or the distance is also meaningful. So in terms of, for example, if I take interpreting that level of education, so assigning the number 5 for example, a postgraduate person, and assigning 1 for a illiterate, it doesn't mean that a postgraduate person have a knowledge of 5 times higher than illiterate. I hope you got this. So, for example, assigning 2 for a primary level of education, 0 for say illiterate, it doesn't mean that a primary, the person who is having primary school education is 2 times wiser or intellectual than illiterate. That's why the distance is not meaningful. Only the order is meaningful. So hence the limitation of this is, so the distance is not meaningful, only order is meaningful. So hence we can convert some of the nominal variables who are having, or which is having these kinds of a ordering form or a ranking form, and we can use these ordinal variables. Okay, this is the meaning and some example for ordinal variables. So there are the discussions related to that aspect only. Okay, all these are related to that only. So like this, even for example, like the milk bronze and the 2 persons. Okay, 2 persons, and related to their it is the frequencies. But that means by making use of that, we can construct the frequencies for that. Okay. And even the preferences means, for example, there are 4 milk brands, 2 persons are there. For example, C is preferred to B, B is preferred to A is preferred to D. So like that preferences. So there probably might be in our mathematics, you might have been seen that, say, if the A is, for example, if the C brand is preferred to B, we can write C greater than B we can write. So greater than B means, so the person is preferring C brand compared to B brand. So we can comparison. The comparison is possible in case of the ordinal types of variables. Okay, and the third scale of measurement is interval scale of measurement. It is again an improvement over the previous 2 methods of measurement. So improvement in the sense, now there is a meaning, or the distance is also meaningful in this case. Earlier distance was not meaningful, whereas in case of interval variables, there is a meaning in the interval. Interval means between 1 to 2, 2 to 3, or 3 to 4. So there is an interval between these numbers. So the interval is also meaningful. Interval is also meaningful. So because of that, these variables are called as interval variables. And probably, I hope, since we are all teachers, we knew that. So the name given by a concept by the different theorists, the name itself indicates what it is. So that's why it is called as an interval variable, because the interval is meaningful. So hence it is called as interval variable. So that is just I have told you that numerically equal distances on the scale represent equal values in the characteristic being measured, because it is metric variable. As already we have noted that the last 2 measurement scales, that is interval and ratio scales, are metric kinds of measurement or quantitative kinds of variables, and hence there is a meaning in the distance, and the intervals are equally distributed. The distance between 1 and 2 is same as the distance between 2 and 3. The distance between 1 and 2 is the same as the distance between 2 and 4, and so on. So hence they are equally distributed, and that interval is meaningful, and hence these variables are called as interval variables. And as already we have noted that it is an improvement over the ordinal scale, and hence this interval scale also contains the information which we have already noted under the ordinal scale, but only it allows you to compare the difference between the objects. Earlier, comparison in terms of the distance was not possible, whereas here it is possible. And the difference between any 2 scale values is identical to the difference between any 2 other adjacent values of the interval scale, just I have told you that. So this is related to interval scale, and the most of the variables, so they are all belong to this interval scale. And for conceptual division or development, so interval and ratio scales are developed by statisticians, but for all the statistical purposes, data analysis purposes, they are treated as synonymous. I hope many of you are familiar with SPSS, Statistical Package for Social Sciences. So the last column in that data, the variable view is related to measurement. If you just click a cell on that, probably you will see only nominal, ordinal, and a scale variable. So scale variable, so which means that the scale variable includes both interval and ratio scale, hence there is not much difference between these 2 for analysis purpose. So these are all related to that. So just what you should have to bear in your mind is that interval scale is an improvement over the ordinal scale, where the distances among the assigned numbers are equal comparing with other 2 numbers. So that is related to interval scale. This is So if you take the temperature, whether in terms of degree Fahrenheit or Celsius, so the distance is one and the same. Okay, this is also, but in case of say some marketing or business related aspects, they treat this also as interval scale but pure statistically, so they are all comes under ordinal scale. Then the last but not the least related to this is the ratio scale. So the ratio scale is the highest scale among these four scales. So the highest means, so first one is nominal, and the second one is interval, and the ordinal, the third one is interval, and the fourth one is the ratio scale. That means this ratio scale possesses all the characteristics of all the previous measurement aspects. So hence it is in the measurement scale, the highest scale is ratio scale. So in interval scale, mathematically to distinguish between these two, the origin or the zero not comes. So that means there is no zero for interval scale, because you are comparing the distance between the two numbers. Hence the zero is not needed, zero is not required. So difference between 1 to 2 or difference between 5 to 6, your purpose is to compare the difference between only chosen numbers. Hence the origin in that number scale is not needed, or the zero is not required. But so for some concepts, for comparison also, if we need a ratio form of the comparisons, and for that ratio form of the comparison we need origin, we need zero. For example, like this, okay, 4 divided by 2, 8 divided by 4. Okay, they are ratio in nature. They are both are in divisional form. So now they are one and the same, equal. So 4 divided by 2 is equal to 8 divided by 4. Like that you can have different fractions. So all those fractions, divisions, related form of your variables are meaningful under this ratio scale, and hence it is called as a ratio scale. So as earlier I have told you that there is not much difference between interval and ratio scale. All these are two types of measurement scales are generally called as metric scales, and most of the statistical tools developed by statisticians are related to this interval and ratio scale. I hope you have gone through that statistics as a course in your PG classes, or some might be teaching that statistics. So from your frequency to table to the advanced statistical tools, so like multivariate statistical tools, so most of those tools are applicable or suitable for these last two methods or last two measurement scales. Okay, this is about the first aspect of the measurement. So that is the measuring the variables based on mathematical representations. Okay, these are all related to that. Okay. Here we have a summary of that. So this is the summary. Summary is related to the 4 levels. Few examples for that. The numerical operations which needed to operate with these scales, and the statistical tools, especially descriptive statistics, which are appropriate for these types of 4 scales. So some are already we have discussed as an example, and the few are new one. So just by reading that examples, probably you are so familiar with those examples. So this is about the measurement scale. Okay, the next part of our discussion related to a continuation of our discussion of the measurement, that is scaling techniques. As already we have noted that it is a continuation of the measurement, in the sense we have a continuous upon which a construct or a concept or a observation or the opinion of the observation is located, and these scaling techniques are related to, most of them are related to abstract form, that is qualitative types of variables, and in general and in particular, the most of them are related to ordinal and nominal scale. Earlier we have noted that nominal and ordinal scale. The scaling techniques are broadly divided into comparative scales and non-comparative scales. Within comparative scales, there are 4 scales were devised, and under non-comparative scales, further it is subdivided into continuous rating scales and itemized rating scales. So under itemized rating scales, so probably you are heard and familiar with that, the Likert scale, semantic, and the Staple scale. So out of this, of course, the Likert and semantic differential scales are the mostly used in research work related to that itemized scale. So now let us have a brief discussion one by one of these scaling techniques. The first one is comparative scaling techniques, and within that, the first one, that is paired comparison. Okay. So the paired means group. Okay. So now we should have to compare the 2 groups or more than 2 groups like this. Okay. Here we have an example. A respondent is presented with 2 objects and asked to select one according to some criterion. So the criterion is a rule that has to be developed by you. It might be preference, for example, in this case, whether you prefers this or the other. So that's why the criterion is a rule that has been developed by the researcher. Based on that, the preferences or the opinions of the respondents have been collected. So then those opinions are located in a predetermined scale. So hence, here for example, we have 2 objects and asked the respondent to select one among them based on some early determined criterion, and the data obtained are ordinal in nature. Okay? And the respondents may state that he or she prefers, so the Alcaire chocolate to Nestle, likes Maras ice cream better than Algida. So these are some products, and the preferences or likeliness of the consumer related to the products. So this is an example. So in this case, now how we should have to make or construct a scale for this paired comparisons is, it is frequently used when the stimulus objects are fixed. Coca-Cola is reported to have conducted more than 190,000 paired comparisons before introducing new Coke. And this is an actual investigation. So that means they have conducted the opinions related to introduce that new Coke into the market. They have collected information from 190,000 respondents. The paired comparison scaling is the most widely used comparative scaling technique for these types of marketing analysis. Here there are 3. One is the Coca-Cola, the Pepsi, and the Cola Turca. So these are the 3 products. So, and the opinions of the respondents are collected regarding to this, whether they like this or the Coca-Cola or the other 2 products. Okay? So that's why like this, whether they prefer, the Pepsi for Coca-Cola or the Cola Turkey with these 2. And so let us assume that here we have a 4 different, one more, 1 minute. That is one example. One example. The another example, like we have a 4 different package materials and using a scale of 0 to 1. So the one is preferring the column to the raw. The second one is preferring the raw to the column. So for example, in case of the earlier example, so then the number out of 1 lakh 90 persons, based on the counts, we can easily come to the conclusion. So that is out of 1 lakh 90 persons or 1 lakh 90 consumers. So the maximum number of the preferences, if it is towards new Coke, so then the respondents or the consumers prefer Coke compared to Pepsi and other products. So that is a simple kind of analysis, okay, as a paired comparison. So if, for example, if we have instead of 2 products, now we have 3 different package materials and which are assigned with a scaling of 0 and 1. So preferred this or not. So prefer this one, not preferred 0. And now we should have to have a table for this. So for example, 1 representing preferring the column to the raw, preferring column to the raw, and if you assign 0, preferring raw to the column. All these should be predetermined. So then the table is given here. Okay. The table related to these 4 package materials. The package materials are glass, plastic, can and carton. Okay. And now you have the same kind of variables. One is the same glass, plastic, can and carton. The same are written in the column head, row head also. Okay, then 0 and 1 like that. So you have a diagonal line where the diagonal line representing not assigning any numbers, because glass with glass, plastic with plastic, there is no opinion related to that. That's why the diagonal line representing 0 opinions, that means no opinions, and the remaining representing 0 and 1, 0 and 1. Okay, so now this is the assigning the numbers for that comparison group. So let us read like this. Let us start with the reading the first cell of the first column, which is glass plastic cell. Glass plastic cell. So this is glass for plastic cell, which represent, which we need to read it as which glass cell as 1. So that means the consumer prefers glass to the plastic. So that means if we are assigning 1 means, so in a packaging machine, whether that Coke or Pepsi or any other such draft drinks should be, okay, given in plastic can or in a plastic material or in a glass material or in a can material, like that they are preferring. So that's why here that read as, that number 1 read as, it means this, the consumer prefers glass to the plastic, and like this. So that is because there 1 here it is represented, here 1 is represented. So he is preferring glass to plastic. And if you take the second, glass to can is 0, glass to carton is 1. So this is the opinion of the each person. Opinion of the each person has been written like this. So again, the each of the row or the column representing whether they prefer can to glass, not preferring, 1 representing preferring that material filling that particular soft drinks. Okay, then the 0, as already I have told you that glass to cell is 0, so the consumer prefers glass to can, and also the glass to carton cell is 1, and that is the values in the first column, as already I have showed that. So the consumer prefers to glass to carton. So then we have to sum all these. So that is related to assigning, how we should have to assign and make a table. So now let us assume that there are 100 consumers. We have selected 100 consumers related to their preference towards whether the soft drinks should be filled in a glass or in a say the plastic material or so on. That is related to a question, that is related to the opinions of that consumers related to that materials, and it looks like whey, carbon and so on. And the table here shows this is 100. Okay. So this represent so packing materials 165 preferring glass. So then 60 out of that, because here it is sum of this means some prefers glass to, okay, glass to plastic is 80, only 25 they prefer. Class 2, carton, only 60 they prefer. So like this total preferences, because though there are only 100 persons, they might prefer combinations. That's why the numbers are more than 100. Our grand totals, our column total, or our totals are more than 100. So finally, by this table of the total, raw total and column total, so the summary is like this. This means that 80 consumers prefer glass to plastic, as just I have told you that, 25 glass to the can and 60 glass to the curtain. So then, in other words, 100 consumers preferred the glass 165 times. Okay? 165 times, 100 consumers preferred the glass 165 times. That is the raw total. Okay? Plastic time 60 times. Whereas the 230 times by the can. So by just observation of this, 230%, that is the highest preferences. So they are preferring in cans. So that's because any marketing analysis, before introducing a product or these types of material used to fill that, so they need to conduct some surveys. So based on the preferences of the consumers, so based on this in opinion, the final conclusion or the sales department or the marketing department has to take the decision. The decision is that since the majority of the preferences or the consumer preferences is towards the can, so then that should be filled, or any soft drinks for that particular company should be filled with can. So that's why here we are not taking only how to scale that. This is a scaling. Scaling is only 0 to 1. Scale is only 0 to 1. So by using that scale, we are also of course make some analysis. So by making this analysis, the final conclusion or the decision that has to be taken by the marketing department is this. So this is related to that first one, scaling tactics, the paired comparison scale technique. And the second one is rank order. So instead of this 0 and 1, now we have to order the preferences. So hence it is called rank order scaling. So the rank order scaling here, as all of us knew that, the presented with several objects simultaneously and asked to order and or the rank them according to some criterion. Whether you, what is your first preference, second preference, third preference. Earlier there was no such order of preferences in paired comparison. Only 0 and 1, whether you like it or not, or like that. Whereas in case not only the preference of the consumer is asked, along with that you have a multiples of options. Out of that multiple of options, you should also have to ask them rank. If you are, for example, there are 4 options, so out of that 4 options, along with your preference of the option, you should also rank them first, second, third and fourth. So that's why it is in continuous form, and the preferences of the consumers or the opinions of the consumers or the opinions of the respondents in general are asked to rank. That's why, for example, if the cars are to be ranked based on their brand, whether you prefer, for example, so for example you have 4 brands of car. So what is your first preference, whether it is towards to Maruti or towards to say the Volkswagen or to any other. So like that they have to ask to rank their opinions. So there are, one example is 10 consumers are asked to rank 4 different brands by severity from most important to less important. So then these are. So there are 4 different brands, there are 10 consumers, and this is about their preferences. So for example, first consumer ranked second, or first preference of the first consumer is towards B. The second one is A. That's why, that is, the B is greater than A is greater than C is greater than D, and vice versa. Or D is less than C, or like that you can also write it. These are the preferences of the 10 consumers related to the 4 brands. So then this is assigning the scales and ranking that. Since only there are 4 brands, you have 4, 1 to 4. If you have 6, 1 to 6, like that. Then the classification of the data is like this. For example, brand. Okay, brand A, B and C. First, okay, which means that if you take the first one, only 2 persons preferred A. 4 persons given first to say that. Okay, A brand to the second. Okay, only 2 consumers given third rank to the A brand, like this. So this is a summary of the earlier table. Summary of the earlier table. So then, okay. So then if you have to give the weight for this, So because there are different opinions and the numbers you have seen that. So only 2 persons are preferred A brand, like that. So then we should have to give a weight. Since the weights are rank here itself, so the counts are multiplied with the ranks. Rank, for example, like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, or 4, 2, 3, 1, like this. These are the ranks multiplied with the counts, preferences. The first number was 2, 2 multiplied with 4, that is the first one. So then 4 multiplied with that is the count. 4 multiplied with 3, like this. Okay. So then you should have to sum these counts with the weights multiplied, and finally sum up. This is the sum of the products of the counts with the weights. The weights are the ranks. Then the total is given in the last column. So out of this 35, which means this. So the brand B is preferred by the majority or the most consumers. That is the final conclusion we can arrive from this kind of table. That is the ranking scale. Okay, the same earlier I have told you that we can do all these things. A is greater than B or preferences, and finally, so then between A, and also you can make some comparisons between these two, distance between these two. So 35, that is between B to A. So that is the 9 units more between these two. That means we are not able to only identify the most preferable brand. Along with that also, we can make comparison with each. So it is comparison with A and B and so on. A and C, or C and D. So here we have seen highest differences between B and A. So these are the analysis by making use of this rank scaling technique. Then the third is constant sum scale. In constant sum scaling, respondents allocate a constant sum of units such as points among a set of stimulus objects with respect to some criterion. Here the points are asked to assign the points which are constant, not change from say one person to other person or one person to one respondent to other. Here is an example related to the supermarket attributes. So there are 3 attributes of the 4 supermarkets. Please allocate 100 points among the attributes so that your allocation reflects the relative importance you attach to the each attribute. So now the scale is 0 to 100. 0 to 100. So then they should have to assign, whether probably when you give your car to any service station, they will give a finally one opinion related form, feedback form. So in that feedback form, probably you have that one 0 to 100. So similarly here it is related to the attributes of the supermarkets. So the attributes are probably given in the next column, the next slide. Okay, evaluating for with 3 criteria. These are the criteria: the behavior of the staff related to the product, cheapness, and the assortment. So now we have 3 criteria, and these are the 4 markets, and these are the opinions. Okay, opinions. So that is 30%. So 40, 20, like this. So here, based on that, okay, based on this, we can say that. So the total is one, the raw total and column total, and finally it is a constant point scale because the points are constant between 0 to 100. So then from the A ranks first, then the B rank, then C, because 110 is for the A rank. So combining all these, combining the preferences of these 100 consumers regarding the 3 attributes, the highest rank is given to, or the highest preference is given to the first market, followed by the other say like market B, then to D, finally to C. So that's why this is a constant ranking where constant sum, that means we have to sum all those things just based on the sum of the preferences of the respondents we can arrive at some conclusion like this. So these are the 4 types of comparison scales. Okay, these 4 methods thus far we were discussed related to comparison, because our purpose is to compare one with other or one attribute with the other attribute. Why it is ಏನು ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ ಆಯ್ತಲ್ಲ? ಓಕೆ ಕೀಬೋರ್ಡ್ ಇಲ್ಲ. It's okay. Actually, sir was asked me to, in another 10 minutes, because the next are related to that Likert scale, cement scale, and other one, Staples scale. Okay, so ಬಂದಿದೆಯಾ? Okay. So then I stop here. Then we will continue with this along with the next topic of that sampling techniques after having tea. Okay. So probably it is 15 minutes. Okay. So we will meet after